everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Attendance Bias. I am your host, Brian Weinstein. Today's guest is Todd M, who chose one of the last remaining Phish festivals not yet discussed on this podcast, the underrepresented and possibly underappreciated Festival 8 from October 30th to November 1st, 2009 in Indio, California. Like most festivals covered on Attendance Bias, this would be the longest episode ever if we covered every song from the 3-day fest, so Todd chose highlights from each set from that weekend. Although 2009 doesn't garner much discussion among the Phish fan base, Festival 8 had a lot going for it. It was a festival, obviously, that's point one in its favor, which is notable, but it also was the first festival in 3.0. It was on the West Coast, it was during Halloween, and it even contained a scheduled morning acoustic set. It felt like Phish knew about all of the high-profile fun stuff that fans love about the band and stuffed most of it into one weekend. On top of that, of course, is the great music. Todd fleshes out what it was like to be at such an event where all of those favorite Phish checklist items intersected all at once. He also tells us about Midwest road trips, street names at the festival, and the best versions of Susie Greenberg ever played. Just a note, about halfway through today's interview, the cord on my microphone jarred a little bit loose, and the audio quality on my end isn't as good for the second half of the episode. It's easy to get used to, but I hope it doesn't bother you as much as it bothers me. But anyway, cheers. Let's enjoy today's episode with Todd about Festival 8 in Indio, California. Todd, thanks for being on Attendance Bias. How are you?
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm doing great.
My pleasure. I am so excited today to talk about your show or your series of shows that you picked, which is Festival 8 from Indio, California. The technical dates are October 30th to November 1st. I've had so much to say about this festival, but it's probably the festival I know least about. So I'm really excited to have someone who was there to tell us what it was like on what I remember as being hot ground.
Very hot, yes.
To get to know you, before we get into the show, let's hear about your Phish experience and who you are as a fan with the Attendance Bias Lightning Round.
Attendance Bias Lightning Round.
So, Todd, what was your first Phish show and what do you remember from it?
My first show was 8/13/96, Deer Creek, hometown show for me. I was 16. Went with my best friend and his sister. Kind of the main thing I took away from that show was just the lot scene, just seeing that for the first time and kind of seeing this whole subculture and kind of that, finding my people kind of vibe to it of just this carnival, circus vibe. As far as the music goes, they released it on Live Phish Volume 12, so I've heard it, ad nauseum. But what I remember at the time of being, a kid like that is the acoustic set and that kind of Somewhere Over the Rainbow theremin jam. Those were the takeaways from being that young and in second set. But there was a lot of good music obviously played.
Well, I'm curious. You said that you were 16, right?
Yep.
All right. So I was 15 at my first show. What did you know going in?
So I'd started getting into the band the summer before. I'd heard Fee on our high school radio station of all things. Immediately went out and got Junta and kind of dove in there. My buddy had gone, the friend I went to the first show with, used to go to Maine every summer. And he came back from this head shop called Mexicali Blues with the original, I think the first pressing of the Farmer's Almanac. So that was like, the internet was obviously still there and, there was resources to dig in, but that Farmer's Almanac, versed me in all things Phish and, all the, set list and everything like that. And so started getting tapes and kind of went from there.
Me too. I think we're of a certain generation where the Farmer's Almanac really was a holy grail. Like you couldn't just search everything up. Like you said, the internet was there, but it wasn't as accessible. It wasn't as organized as it is today, right? Google didn't, if it existed, it wasn't what it is. If you wanted to go to Alta Vista, maybe, or Yahoo was around as a search engine. But if you typed in Phish, you wouldn't find that much. There wasn't that much out there on the internet. No one uploaded anything. What was your most recent show and what did you think of it?
Recent show was 10/17/2014, Eugene, Oregon. It's been a big gap, so don't revoke my Phish cred card here. But the show was good. It was the tour opener, so kind of a lot of anticipation for that tour leading up to Halloween. Really cool vibe. Drove down there solo. Didn't even have a ticket. Just got one right before, and really decent show. Like the Waiting All Night opener was, I think, is a great way to open up a show. Second set was pretty great. What was the last song? Oh, Wingsuit was in the encore slot, which I actually really like. I think that's a kind of a good place for that song. But
I
those
wish
were
that
pretty new songs, so they were.
Yeah, well, that was the tour. That was the Fuego tour.
Yep.
I wish that Wingsuit would find its place in the set list. And I'm saying it as if it's the song's fault. Obviously, it isn't. But I feel like Wingsuit is kind of inconsistent when I see it. Sometimes it blows the audience away, and other times it falls completely dead. What are your impressions when they play it live?
Yeah, similar. I mean, I really like the jam. I really just like the, kind of Pink Floyd vibe to it. I don't know exactly. I mean, I did like it in that encore slot. I'm not exactly sure where else it could go. Some maybe a landing pad in the second set. I think I've heard it a few times there where it's actually worked well, but it is kind of that almost Pink Floyd prog rock kind of vibe to it.
What is the farthest you've ever traveled to see Phish?
I think it's a tie between in summer '98 we did the Columbus Alpine Deer Creek run, and we went from Columbus to Alpine, but we did stop in my hometown in Indianapolis for a little breather and slept maybe a couple hours. So not sure if that completely counts, but the other one was I flew up to Outside Lands in San Francisco from San Diego for the night just to go see Phish. Not sure exactly which counts. I'm not definitely not a road dog. So
well, that's why you flew.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Is Outside Lands, I know it's not really around anymore. Is that the festival that was in Golden Gate Park?
Yeah, it was really cool. I think
how was that?
I think Vampire Weekend played that summer too, or that festival too. It was cool. It was really cool. I mean, they had like oysters and good wine, and I mean, it was like I think the people who put on Bonnaroo and maybe put on some of the Phish festivals did a lot of the decorations and the kind of festival support. So it was pretty cool. Like in the woods, there was a lot of like weird stuff, and they just had like amazing food, and like it was very it was pretty cool to like go eat from eating oysters and drinking like really crisp Sauvignon Blanc to going to see two Phish sets, which they were a lot of fun at the time. I haven't gone back and listened to them, so definitely not doing an attendance bias for that.
Yeah,
but,
that sounds very Northern California, by the way. My girlfriend, my wife now, is from San Francisco, and that sounds exactly right. The type of way you would see Phish at a festival.
Right.
What is your most controversial Phish opinion?
I mean, it's becoming a little less controversial, but '96 I think is an overlooked year. I've been
Underrated.
Underrated. Yeah. Sorry. I just think, I might be biased because it was my first year of, seeing the band and also just, really kind of diving in head first to them. But, you have, that secret show in Woodstock, you got that crazy Amsterdam show in the summer, the summer tour that, was my first show where they were doing those acoustic sets almost every night. And then Clifford Ball. I think the fall tour is overlooked probably the most out of that whole year. Halloween on is, I think, some great jams. I think almost every show has something, worthwhile. And then that Vegas show is like amazing. It's just great. So yeah, I'll omit the New Year's run. I haven't really delved too much in there. So I don't know if it has much saving grace, but still, I think the year's overlooked. Also I don't really dig Guy Udi, so that might also be
I'll balance it out.
Unpopular, yeah.
Your first opinion isn't that controversial, so not liking Guy Udi.
Yeah, I get it.
I agree with you, though. It's becoming kind of a recurring motif on this show that the more people who choose shows from '96, when I do that part that's coming up next with the context of the tour or the show, like you said, I don't have to repeat it, but when you take a step back and look at 1996, so much happened. They accomplished so much, and the music, like you mentioned with your first show, was just really, really, really good. What is your favorite post-show snack?
I mean, probably back in the day, it was a kind veggie burrito, but now I'd probably seek out a decent bar to go, get some more substantial food.
To get a crisp Sauvignon Blanc and some oysters.
Maybe not that fancy, but
What is the weirdest thing you've ever seen at a Phish show?
I think it was the Winona Judd sit-in. It was for Freebird on June 22nd, 2000. It was the Tennessee Nashville adjacent show. Yeah, my head was in a different place, and I mean, the bluegrass sit-in was great. It was out of the blue, coming out of like a Harry Hood jam. But then when she came out, the energy just shifted, at least for me and my buddies. Just probably the last thing I would expect for a sit-in. I guess that might have been the precursor to Kid Rock, but yeah.
That'd be quite a line to draw from Winona Judd to Kid Rock. I recently had a guest on, my friend Tom, to talk about that whole show, the Antioch.
Yeah.
I guess it's Nashville, but Antioch, Tennessee show. And I kind of agree with you. I mean, I have the benefit of listening on the couch all these years later. But if I were there, I don't know if I would have been like, oh my God, this is awesome. I think it was Del McCurry's band. I could be wrong on that.
Yeah. I think Sam Bush maybe popped in there.
I would be like that. This is amazing. I can't believe I'm seeing this. Or I could have been on the other end where it's like, I just want more Phish.
Yeah, no, and I've looked at the YouTube video. There's a video of either the whole show or at least most of that section of the second set, and I still kind of get that same feeling of not really feeling it. Of just this kind of odd. Yeah, I'd love to hear more Phish. I mean, they closed it with "You Enjoy Myself," so I think they kind of made up for it. But that whole end of the second set just kind of was odd to me.
When was this show played?
Today's show, which would be several shows, highlights from Festival 8, Indio, is from October 30th, 31st, and November 1st, 2009. And if you look on Phish.in or re-listen the app, they actually have the sound check from the 29th, which is very good as well. And I noticed when you chose this show, a lot of people on this podcast kind of overlooked 2009. We talked about 96 being an underrated year. I don't know if 2009 is underrated musically, but it's certainly not mentioned enough when it comes to pivotal years in Phish history. I wrote that 2009 is one of the best, and then I crossed out best, but maybe it's the most important year in Phish history. Not the best in terms of great shows or jams, but emotionally, I felt this way at the time, that we were kind of on borrowed time. We didn't know this was going to happen. We thought it was, I did. When I say we, I really mean me, but we thought it was all over. So everything that was played from March 6th, 7th, and 8th at Hampton until today, to present time, it's all borrowed time. It's all house money. They played 52 shows that year, including the comeback at Hampton, a long summer tour, a two-legged summer tour, that is, a fall tour, which included this festival, unusually scheduled during Halloween. And I thought even more unusually in California, but we'll talk about that a little later. And a New Year's Eve run in Miami. So they were really trying out a lot of new stuff. I remember that this festival, when it was being told to us, the best word I could choose is, it wasn't really announced, it was more revealed. For anyone out there who remembers or doesn't remember, on the Phish website, there was a save the dates with these dates for Halloween. And there was a cartoon map of the United States. And each day that you went back and checked it, a few states were unceremoniously removed from the map in pretty gruesome ways because it was Halloween. So a cyclops would come on and rip it off the map, or a swarm of red ants would eat up Nevada or something. A shot of darts would kill one of the states. And California was airlifted off the map with, I think it was a helicopter. But eventually, as we got closer and closer, and there weren't that many states left, California was airdropped back onto the map. And it revealed that the Halloween festival would be at the Empire Polo Club in Indio, California. This would kick off the 2009 fall tour, but it would be close to 3 weeks between this festival and the actual tour kickoff in Detroit. What do you remember about the announcement and the beginning of this tour and the announcement of this festival?
Yeah, the revealing is really cool, and you can go back and check it out on the studio or the agency or whatever that did all that, marketing and design for it is called Chop Shop Studio. And I recently went back there and kind of watched. They have like time lapsed or like Zoom kind of captures of the website, and you can kind of see it what you're exactly describing of the kind of killing off of the states and all that kind of fun stuff. Yeah, I'd kind of off of Phish when they went on their first hiatus in 2000. I mean, I was still kind of, I think I picked up Round Room and all that stuff, but I kind of just stopped, following set lists and all that, and kind of got more into, other types of music like indie rock and hip hop and things like that. And I think I heard some of the Coventry shows from, I was living in Tahoe and working on a boat, and I made the captain put on the Sirius channel to hear Phish, and I think we turned it off like midway through. I don't know what it was that we were listening to, but it didn't sound great. So just kind of fell off that whole 2.0 era. Didn't see any shows. When '09 came around, I was, when I heard that they were coming back and Trey was healthy, I was super happy about that. And, definitely like got those Hampton shows on, whatever the download site at the time was, listening to those was super, kind of reinvigorated my, my Fishdom again, and started kind of following that summer tour, and, looking at set list again. And the Joy album dropped, and it might not be my favorite album, but it was just kind of cool hearing some new songs. And
I feel the same way. Yeah.
And then once they started announcing this festival, I really didn't think it was going to be where it was, but still followed along. And once Indio dropped, was I think it's 2 or 3 hours away from San Diego. So we booked an RV, me and my buddies, and decided to go, and it was awesome. And then the other part of it was they started revealing the albums too. Like, I think they killed off the albums too, if I'm not
mistaken. They had something like 52 albums. I looked at the same website that you did, where the animation studio is posted.
Yeah.
And you could find the list of albums. I can't recall off the top of my head, but it was something around 50, including some really obscure ones or really high profile ones, like Who's Next was on there. And again, those would be, like you said, killed off too in much more gruesome ways, because by then we knew it was a festival in California, but also that it would be Halloween. So, the gruesomeness, the gore was kind of on point. It was thematic. When I decided that I couldn't go, I knew that I wouldn't be able to. West Coast is tough for me. I don't get days off for Halloween. So that was tough. I had to experience this from afar. But in the big picture, looking back, I thought that the difference that this year had, that this festival was, that it was in the fall, that it was in California, that it was Halloween. Like, it was a combination of all great things about Phish in their first year back. A festival, a Halloween show, a fall tour. Like, it was curious, I thought, that they combined Halloween and a festival. Maybe they felt they had like a checklist that they could kill 2 birds with 1 stone. I don't know. This was the first festival, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but the only one to date on the West Coast. I always wondered what it would be like to pack all your festival things and then throw in Halloween costumes. What was that like, the Halloween aspect of this?
Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, I think we focused more on the the festival packing of just making sure we had drinks and all that all the supplies basically. I think our costumes were a ragtag. We kind of went as a animal collective, basically just had different kind of masks as animals, and different kind of pretty easy like sweatshirts and things just to kind of blend into the animal theme. But people were went all out. People had awesome costumes. Again, you can see that I think there's like, if Flickr's still around there, I remember there being like Flickr accounts and pages with all these photos from the festival, and you could really see everyone's really creative costumes and things like that. It was really cool.
That is cool. I just double checked and I found the number. There were 44 album covers that were killed off as the day arrived, and we were left with the Rolling Stones classic Exile on Main Street, which would be played on Halloween. And I can't wait to hear more about that from you. A number of your highlights are from that. And about 6 months later, after the festival, highlights from it were released in theaters in the then trendy 3D format, thanks to Avatar. Did you go see Phish 3D?
I did, yeah. It was cool. It was they didn't. I don't think they showed enough clips from it, but yeah, it was. I don't even know if that exists on DVD anymore.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
No, it's impossible to find. You can't stream it. You can't rent it. You can't buy it. It kind of showed up and left. I don't know.
The
I
the
have a
Loving Cup's on
feeling.
YouTube. I know that. I just
Oh,
recently
okay.
watched that, and there might be a few other, maybe Susie, but I don't think even Susie's on there. I should have picked it up when it came out.
I have a feeling that the members of Phish, mostly born in the mid '60s, so like by the mid '70s, they were little kids, but like old enough, 10 years old or so, that the idea of things being in 3D, mostly in horror movies and B movies, was like really fun. Like Jaws 3D
Right.
is a Nightmare on Elm Street, that's 3D. So when they had the opportunity and 3D was back in vogue, due to Avatar's huge success in 2009, they thought, why not do Phish 3D? I don't know
Yeah.
this. It's just my guess.
Yeah, it was kind of a party in the movie theater. I remember me and my wife and one of our friends who went to the show with us. I think we partook in the parking lot before, and then you got your little 3D glasses. I don't think they were branded with like anything Phish related. I think they were
No, they
just
weren't. It was the same
AMC or
ones for
whatever. Yeah,
Avatar.
yeah. But it was really cool seeing like the balloons. That was really the only 3D aspect of it. I don't think there was a whole lot to do with it, but like the balloons flying in your face all of a sudden, and it kind of felt like you're in the crowd again.
It was a lot of fun. But so, Todd, tell us, who were you and where were you in the summer of 2009 that led you to Festival 8?
So yeah, I was 29 now at this point, living in San Diego. Life was very much less complicated and pretty easy going. Yeah, I was working bartending at a local craft beer bar. The kind of food scene, craft and farm to table scene was kind of just cracking off right then. And had been in the business for a while. Again, we were kind of following, the reveal of the Phish Festival, and me and some buddies that were into Phish decided, hey, let's rent an RV and let's, head out there and, make it a real fun time. Like none of us had, I think my buddy had been to Coventry, but most of us
That
hadn't
doesn't
been.
count.
Yeah, it doesn't count. So we hadn't been to any Phish festivals, let's say that, and hadn't been to any Halloween shows either. So this was kind of, it was like a bundle package. It was kind of crazy.
Yeah.
So yeah, kind of started planning everything, doing all that. This was also it was my girlfriend at the time, now wife, her first Phish shows, and only, I think looking back, that's a lot to digest for somebody who doesn't really even like Phish, to, drag them to the, hot desert and pack in 8 sets over 3 nights and, all that. And
Have you been to any festivals other than Indio, like in
this
addition
was,
to this one?
no, like you mean, outside of Phish or
No, no,
just,
no, just Phish
oh, just
festivals.
Phish. No, this is the only, yeah, only Phish
Okay.
Fest.
Because I've only been to the ones, well, no, I went to it and the two in Watkins Glen, or two and a half if you count Curveball. I was wondering what the festival grounds were like in Indio. I've never been. I know it's where Coachella is hosted too.
Yeah, it's a polo field, so I mean it's flat and grassy, on the actual grounds where the band plays, and then just on the outskirts, it's just parking lot. It's not a parking lot, I guess. It's more just kind of dirt and gravel and stuff like that. I don't think there's really any concrete that I can recall, other than maybe some paths and stuff like that. But they're really particular about no glass, and I'm guessing that's the same thing with Coachella, just because they don't want glass anywhere near
Mhm.
the greens for the horses and stuff like that. But I mean, it was beautiful. It was, I think that's the only time you could probably have that festival. Maybe in springtime. I think they do like a country version of Coachella in like April or March or April or something like that. But otherwise, it's going to just be too hot. And it was really hot at the festival during the days, and then it jumps down like 30, 40 degrees. So it's like you need all kinds of supplies and clothes and everything like that.
And why do you have attendance bias toward this specific weekend or this performance, but it's many performances? In other words, why did you pick Festival 8?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say this is like the best festival, as far as music goes, or have not been at a festival, even just the like ambiance and the vibe of it. But for me, it was really awesome. I still have, long lasting memories from it, of being just a great time, whether or not the music, is mind blowing. I also just have to give it to the band for, again, like you said, kind of taking this on so early back in their return. I mean, I think they could do it now and probably kill it the way they're playing. I think that would they wouldn't even need to do the Halloween part of it. They could do a late fall festival, or just a few shows, couple night run out there, and it would be awesome. But I just think, the music is solid. There are some good jams in there, but and the covers album is, it's not my favorite, but again, it's very good. And with, Sharon Jones and the backing part of it is, I think, was what makes it. And then I just think the overall vibe of West Coast, late October, early November, being able to be outside and, shorts and a t-shirt is awesome.
So let's start it off. We'll start on the first day, October 30th, set one. The first highlight that you chose is the MoMA dance, but you also said that it was everything leading up to the MoMA dance. What was it about this opening sequence that you loved so much?
Yeah, I mean, I thought the party time, the chalk dust, the MoMA, and then in the NICU to start the set was just a great way to kick things off. I picked the MoMA in particular. I just felt like it was super tight, flawless. Gordon's bass was just like at the forefront, kind of leading everything up to that point. I'm not sure if it's just the sound recording on re-listen, but everything sounds really good. And the other thing is they just didn't seem to have any like rust to shake off or any nerves. They kind of went into it just comfortable. Like I feel like they've almost had more nerves to shake off on some of these East Coast festivals, maybe where there's more, diehard fans or whatever. I don't think this festival sold out. I could be mistaken, but
I'd be surprised if it did.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big ground. So those West Coast shows are usually more casual and just kind of a looser, laid back vibe. So I felt like these 4 songs were just a great way to kick it off.
Next up, you picked Ocelot. And for me, this took me back. This was a time travel machine because in a lot of ways, Ocelot and Time Turns Elastic to me were these songs of 2009 because it seemed like every show I went to, they were played. Obviously, that wasn't the case, and one found its footing where the other one not so much. But Ocelot took a while to kind of find its place. A lot of fans, myself included, were pretty tough on Ocelot. There's a lot of chatter in the crowd. You could hear it. You mentioned the quality of the recording on re-listen. It's outstanding. If I didn't know better, I might think that it was a soundboard or like a really small venue with a perfectly placed taper, but it isn't. But there are certain parts where there's a lot of chatter, but Ocelot is itself. It's like slow, ragged guitar solo, typical of when it was early played. It picks up steam. And then by the end, it's this big, huge jam that didn't really go anywhere. It just meandered and played with dynamics.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is like a great set one festival kind of daytime-y song to play. Very confident.
Oh, was it a daytime set?
I think it was more of like a dusk, kind of starting to get dark. But, it just had that kind of daytime vibe to it of just kind of a nice simmering jam of just slow rolling, confidence. Everybody says the Tennessee Jed comparison, and I totally get that. It's just kind of a feel good, kind of roll and jam.
Yeah, it's funny how hard fans were on Ocelot. I remember when you just mentioned the Tennessee Jed comparison, a lot of people were calling it Phish's Tennessee Jed, but derisively, not as a compliment. And a lot of fans who were tough on Phish when they got back the songs on Joy, like you mentioned earlier, a song like this wasn't really received extremely well, but right now it fits right into anywhere, any part of a set list. After Ocelot, we dive into set 2, which I am really impressed by this choice. You picked Piper right in the middle of set 2. Out of 9 songs, it's set 5, and it comes in from a raging Wolfman's brother.
Yeah, I mean, I really like there was a point in at about 7:45 mark. Trey's guitar kind of shifts with his effects, and him and Phish start kind of overlaying these vocals. Really cool to hear. It almost sounds like they're saying she sold my soul, just kind of, really vibey, just kind of mellow. I honestly reminded me of the Phoenix 2000 Piper, like a much mellower version, where they were kind of doing the Guy Forget kind of vocals over that, the kind of the jam part. It definitely goes type 2 and just kind of has this kind of groovy, cool vibe after kind of, a typical but raging Piper.
Yeah, it covers a lot in a small amount of time. Fishman is doing a lot of work on the hi-hat at the beginning of the jam, and Page is playing the organ really well, and then it gets really super tight. You mentioned at 7:45, about 2 minutes earlier than that, I wrote it goes from tight to tighter. To me, Fishman and Page kind of stood out the most on this Piper. And to your point about the 7:45 mark on the Phish.net jam charts, apparently it's quoting "She Saved My Soul." I looked up what that is, and it's listed as a song by Kid Jack, Jac, but I have no idea who that is. So, okay. And that's it for day 1. We move up to Halloween. So this was a 3-set show, like all Halloween shows are. You walked in the grounds. Did you get the Phish bill right when you walked in?
Ooh, I don't remember. I don't think we did. This was this was definitely a daytime show. This set. I don't think we got it until right before the Halloween set. I could be wrong because I do remember us talking all about Exile before, but I'm not exactly sure when they handed it out, but possibly I'll give you that.
Well, I'm just so curious because I've been to a couple Halloween shows, and the anticipation, there's almost nothing like it.
Yeah.
It's worse / better than New Year's.
Well, all the streets and parking lots and things like that were named after some of the albums that were still on the board. So like I think there was that MGMT Aurora Boreal or whatever that one was. Prince's, whatever that one was still on there, Jimi Hendrix. So that was kind of cool. Like the ones that were still on the chopping board were, named after some of the parking lots and things like that.
That's fun. Did you have any hopes? Did you have any preferences? Like, I wish they played this. Nothing against Exile on Main Street, but what were you pulling
Yeah,
for?
I mean, definitely not Exile on Main Street because I didn't know it. I knew Loving Cup basically. I can't remember what some of the other albums were, but yeah, I'm sure it wasn't. I'm sure it was something else. But I was happy either way. I just wanted to see a Halloween show, which is always fun.
Sure.
So
Always. Well, before we get to the Halloween set, they opened with an opening set, and they played again right in the middle of set one. You chose to talk about Bathtub Gin, song 5 out of 9, and this blew me away. This one, Mike, interestingly, wasn't the easiest to hear on this part of the mix, even though the previous day he was. But I don't know, maybe it was because Trey and Paige are standing out with the melody, but I don't know. I have to imagine that everyone was rocking out to this Bathtub Gin.
yeah, I would pick this as my favorite set of the weekend just because personal bias, personal attendance bias here. I love daytime Phish. It was, my wife was having a great time. We were, with our crew. It was kind of got to walk around the whole festival grounds in daylight and see all, the installations and things like that. The music to start was pretty easy going. And then they started getting into some good jams, and the Antelope was a close contender just because I love daytime Antelopes. I just think that song goes so well, just especially that intro part. It's just so fun. This gin really took off, and I think I wrote down at the 9:25 mark. I think Trey loops his feedback. I could be wrong there, but he kind of like the sustained feedback. He's almost playing like counter to it, and I think he like maybe quickly looped it and is kind of doing this like it kind of reminded me of like Pavement, Stephen Malkmus distortion jam right before it goes back into the gin quote and kind of ends it. But there's just a really kind of cool lead up even before that mark of the gin jam just kind of getting out there a little bit.
What I liked about it, I got to re-listen to the part that you mentioned because I didn't notice that. But I think what I was hearing, my favorite part was like right before it. It just sounded like straight ahead boogie rock and roll. But I thought if I were there, I would be just loving this, hands up in the air, the whole thing. And the fact that you could note something just a minute after that, something very technical and like sustained feedback, counter lead, stuff like that. I mean, just how much could be fit into this relatively small package of Bathtub Gin. What a great way to open the day.
Great way. Yeah, the possum was fun too. I mean, I think daytime possum might actually be even better than antelope. It's just my wife at the time thought it was awesome. So I think that's the first time I caught her on that. She was yelling at awesome, awesome. I was like, what do you say? Oh,
She'll never be able to get that back.
no.
The second set, which is Exile on Main Street. So when you walked in, what were your thoughts? Not being familiar with the album, obviously you knew the Rolling Stones.
I had I'd probably never heard this album before, and that's kind of par for course. I hadn't heard Little Feat's Waiting for Columbus before. I heard that. Same thing with like Quadrophenia. So that's a cool thing about Phish is they turn you on to these monumental albums. They're obviously huge albums in history, and just for lack of whatever. I just, hadn't been turned on to them yet. And, I'm now a convert and love this album, have it on vinyl and think it's great with the Stones. I'm still not, 100% sold on Phish's version of it, but, going into the set, it was just, I don't even know how to describe it. It was just surreal just to kind of, hear Phish doing somebody else's music all in entirety like this, and somebody like the Rolling Stones, who put on such a show, and Trey's not Mick Jagger by any means.
And that becomes quite obvious at certain points, vocally speaking.
Yeah, I think the vocals were a little. That's again why I think even if you just took this whole festival and moved it to 2020, 2021, 2019, where Trey's vocals are so much better, the band's vocals are better. I think this festival I would be even, singing the praises more on this album choice. Unfortunately, Sharon Jones wouldn't be here, but
right. Well, before we mourn Sharon Jones, let's celebrate her, because the first one you picked was Loving Cup, which is probably the best version they've ever played.
Yeah, no, totally agree. I'm really surprised Tab doesn't do this, especially, given the horns and the backing vocals. I think they could really differentiate it between Phish's version of it. This stands out. This is the only song I knew from that album, and thought they just crushed it.
I agree. And when I heard it, I was so impressed. I think the first time I heard it was either at Phish 3D, because they included this as part of it. And I was just blown away in my seat, because you imagine the most rocking version of Loving Cup you've ever heard that Phish plays. And, they could bring it up, dial it up to 11 at any given show. But now you add soulful backing vocals, horns, and Trey having more space than ever. And they just really, really brought it up to a new level. They made it their own in a way that, even though they've been playing it since 1993, in a way that they hadn't before.
Yeah, I think with that chorus, it just is so much more powerful with the vocals and the horns. It really just, kind of puts an extra oomph on it.
After that, you chose I Just Want to See His Face. And I was surprised when I re-listened to it, because to me, this is just a simple 3-chord song and repetitive lyrics. It starts from "Let this music relax your mind," and then it goes, "I just want to see his face." What was it about this that drew you to pick it from this whole set?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It's super simple. Almost has like a slowed down Timberho kind of drum line. I think this was almost just like a palate cleanser kind of in the mid set of just, kind of this gospel-y, kind of dark vibe to it. Just kind of, no horns, just really easy going. And I kind of would like to hear something like this come out of like a second set Carini jam or something really dark into this. It kind of has that, again, healing gospel vibe. I guess it's just kind of a nice passageway to something else.
Sometimes you ain't got nobody, want somebody to love. Somebody to love. Want somebody to love. Got nobody to love. Somebody to love. Want somebody to love. You want somebody to love. Want somebody to love. Want somebody to love. Want somebody to love.
I agree with you. I think that this could find a place, like you said, after a dark Carmini jam. But then part of me is wondering, could Phish pull this off without backing singers?
Yeah.
I don't know, because hearing Trey, and there are some other lyrics throughout this album that hearing Trey sing, I know, and he owns it to his credit, but it still makes me cringe when I'm driving in my car, like Sweet Black Angel. I'm like, oh, this is not for you. Not that Mick Jagger is any, better qualified to sing it. I don't know. I think that Mick Jagger sells it in a way that Trey doesn't. Mick Jagger isn't as innocent, I think, as Trey.
Right.
And then we skip ahead to the end of the show on the 31st of Susie Greenberg. Definitely one of the best versions ever. I feel like it's in rarefied air, this one.
Yeah, I think this one and the 12/28/03 version are really the only two I ever really need to hear. I do love those, 91, 90 or whatever the Giant Country Horns versions were, just because I remember getting those tapes so early on, and the Arrowhead, Susie or whatever might be stuck in my head, and just those horn lines. But yeah, Sharon and Sandra were awesome to this. This just, blew me away. My wife and I kind of snuck up to the closer to the front during the yim, and kind of had our faces and our animal mask blown off, during the vocal jam and all that. And then when Susie started, I kind of looked over at her and was like, "Oh, this is probably going to be like 4 or 5 minutes most." And then the backing vocals came out, and I'm not sure exactly how long this went, but at least 10 minutes, 9 minutes.
At least, because I wrote in my notes that there was a false ending at 9 minutes,
Yeah,
which means they came back in, and then it goes up, in my words, it goes up another few notches. If you're going to end an epic 3 sets of music, this is the way to do it.
Yeah, agree. And yeah, this was on that Phish 3D movie too, and I still remember kind of having goosebumps in the theater seeing it, and then even more so after Sharon passed. That this kind of lives on, and I'm pretty sure I just saw it on YouTube of that same version, which is really cool to kind of go revisit.
Do you remember about how chilly it was after the show? You mentioned that Indio is kind of like in the desert, and while it's hot during the day, it cools down at night.
Yeah, it was pretty chilly. I mean, we had our mask on, and we had our like sweatshirts with kind of koala bear and panda bear retrospectively, like add-ons or whatever. So it was maybe a little warmer for us, but it got pretty chilly. I don't know if it was down in the 50s or what it was, but it was cold. I mean, I think anytime, after living in San Diego, when it drops 30 to 40 degrees, once the sun sets, it doesn't matter if it's, from 100 to 70, it's a huge shock to the body. So yeah, we would always dip back to the RV and, layer up, I think.
Hi, everybody. Brian here to welcome you to the set break of today's episode of Attendance Bias. First, thank you for listening. And second, just a quick reminder to tell you that even though Attendance Bias comes to you for free, it does take a lot of work and it does take quite a bit of money to keep the lights on here at production. So I just wanted to ask a small favor. If you could support the podcast in any number of the following ways. If you could leave a review or a rating of it on whichever podcast app you use. If you could spread the word, telling a friend or someone you think may be interested in it about it. Or probably the most concrete way is to go to www.buymeacoffee.com/attendancebias and donate however much you can financially to help with the continuing costs of Attendance Bias. So thank you again so much for listening, and I hope you enjoy the second half of today's episode. The next day, November 1st, which is one of my favorite dates on the Phish calendar. I always think they play good shows the day after Halloween. I think that a lot of the pressure is off and they feel like they could cut loose a little bit. But this show started, or this day started, with a much heralded acoustic set that they played. And it was was it in the morning or in the afternoon?
It was morning. I mean, it might have been 10, but I mean, that's all respects morning at a Phish fest.
Oh, absolutely. So 10 a.m., you go into an acoustic set. Did you get donuts and coffee?
We missed it. We got there just a little too late. I guess there was a huge line. I think we got the coffee, but didn't get the donut. But this also might have spurred the baker's dozen. With the whole donut thing. They were in the shape of 8, which was kind of cool, and kind of walked around. Maybe the show started at 11, but like the donut, the passing out of donuts and all that kind of stuff. Grounds opened at 10 or something, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, you have to be hardcore to get those donuts.
Yeah, and it was really hot out too, so it was already starting to get hot even that early.
You chose to talk about The Curtain, which I thought was a unique choice for an acoustic set. I don't usually picture this song acoustic, and I associate Page's organ part, that ascending organ part, with The Curtain. To me, that's what the song is. So I was thrilled to hear this song in a completely different way, where it's just Page on piano and no other keyboards.
Yeah, I think this and the McGrupp were kind of the two oddball, what you would think of choices for an acoustic treatment. The rest of them, kind of seemed par for the course of what they might play. But yeah, The Curtain I thought was really cool. Like you said, without the organ, it's kind of cool just to hear the guitar, the piano parts there. When they're doing their vocals, it almost kind of reminded me of, on re-listen of kind of a Crosby, Stills, Nash Young, almost harmonies, kind of, which you don't get at all from the electric version. So pretty cool to hear that. And then they even added on the with part, and I really like that because you can hear, especially on that re-listen recording, Fishman's drumming is like super jazzy and dynamic, and you might get that in some of the recordings of other shows, but it almost seemed more at the forefront in this version.
I agree. And that with section, it goes for a long time. It goes to the point where Trey just has to start playing that closing riff to let the band know, all right, we're going to end now, because it's mesmerizing. It's a really good jam.
Yeah, agree.
And then we skip the second set all the way to the end of set 3, where they play Light, which to me in 2009, I felt similarly toward Light as I did to Ocelot, where it's like, oh, this is a new song, cheesy lyrics, not in for it. But the difference is Light had the best jams of the year. and Page really came forward with the synthesizers in this one. I was very impressed with this version of Light, and 2009 is full of them.
Page's like spacey synth jam part of it was just awesome. We had this was towards the end of the fest of the 3-night run, and we were pretty beat, hanging way back on the festival grounds, and just kind of taking that all in. And after the main Light part, they kind of just really just like bring it all down to this kind of like simmering space ambiance. And there was this really cool art installation where it was almost like a blimp. Again, you can kind of see this on some YouTube videos and some of those Flickr photos I mentioned. But it was like a ton of balloons almost all put together like a blimp, maybe with like LED lights inside of them, all different colors, kind of like pulsating to this spacey music. And it was just really cool to take in. It was floating above the crowd during this part of it.
I remember that. There's a name for it. It's not coming to me now, but that'll come around in the fact check. You mentioned how this version of Light, this jam is like simmering. I thought that by around 11 minutes or 13 minutes, it sounds almost like the ghost from It. You mentioned earlier that you kind of took a break from Phish in 2.0. This is kind of what a lot of the jams sound like toward the back end of this Light. If you like this, I would highly recommend checking out some 2003 Phish.
Nice. Okay.
And to close up the whole thing, the end of Light bleeds seamlessly into Slave Slave to the traffic light. This is the best, right? There's no more triumphant way to end, like you said, this epic weekend of great music than Slave.
Agree. Yeah. Triumphant is the great. That's what my notes said. They said triumphant out of the ashes of Light. I mean, that Light just really kind of came down to just almost, super deafness, quietness. And then Slave kicks up. I think it's just a great way to end a 3-day run. And yeah, it's pretty awesome.
Todd, thank you so much for coming on Attendance Bias to talk about Festival 8, Indio, October 30th to November 1st, 2009, Phish's Comeback Festival, their comeback Halloween show, and just a weekend that is kind of forgotten in at least their 3.0 reputation. But I'm glad that you were able to kind of give us the real boots on the ground view of what it was like to be there. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And that's it for today's episode with Todd M about Festival 8. But before we move on and end things up, let's take a look at the attendance bias fact check.
Attendance bias fact check.
First, Todd summarizes his first show, August 13th, 1996 at Deer Creek, and mentions the acoustic set. At that show, Phish performed Waste, Train Song, and Strange Design acoustically on a mini stage. Todd said that the friend he attended his first show with came back from Maine one summer with a copy of the Farmer's Almanac that he got at a head shop called Mexicali Blues. I don't know if it's the same one, but there is still a head shop in Portland, Maine called Mexicali Blues that is still open. The shop looks like it is everything one would expect to find at a head shop. It's located at 219 Commercial Street in the city, and they have their website at mexicaliblues.com. Todd said that the farthest he's ever traveled for Phish was during the summer 1998 tour when he went from Columbus to Alpine Valley. Those show dates were, respectively, July 31st and August 1st of 1998. According to Google Maps, when I checked, the distance is 454 miles, which is a drive of just over 7 hours. Phish played the Outside Lands Festival in 2011 on August 12th. Vampire Weekend did not play that festival, but the co-headliners that weekend were Muse and Arcade Fire. When listing some of the highlights of 1996, Todd mentions, quote, The Secret Show in Woodstock. That was played on June 6, 1996 under the name Third Ball. He mentions, quote, The Crazy Amsterdam Show that summer, which was on July 12th, and that show has been covered on this podcast with Jeff Somar. He also mentions The Vegas Show, which was December 6, 1996, and that show has also been reviewed on this podcast with Sean Fawcett. Todd and I discuss how Susie Greenberg from the Halloween show of Festival 8 is one of the best ones ever, and Todd name-checks the version from December 28, 2003. That version is from the American Airlines Arena in Miami and has an extended jam after the first chorus. For good measure, I would throw in the version from September 14th, 2000 for discussion of best Susie Greenberg ever. The floating balloon blimp that Todd describes during Light at Festival 8 was called the Burble, B-U-R-B-L-E. You can find images and video of it on YouTube. And that's it for today's episode. I'd like to thank Todd M for joining me today, Phish.net for its help with the fact check, and Phish.in for the recording used in today's episode. If you enjoy Attendance Bias, please support the show by leaving a rating and a review of it on your favorite podcast app. You can also follow Attendance Bias on social media, mostly Instagram and Twitter, and of course, you can help support the show at www.buymeacoffee.com/attendancebias. Thank you again so much for listening, and I'll see you next time on Attendance Bias.